Welcome to Old Man Sports Talk. I'm your host, Old Man Nate, and today's title is 2023 College Football Preview of Non-Power 5 and Independent Schools. So today we're starting a series leading up all the way to the start of college football season, and we're just going to preview we're going to start out with previewing like I said, the non-power five and independent schools today. Then we're going to break it down from there. We're going to break it down by the Power Five conferences: ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, Pac-12, and the SEC, and that will be released in that order. Those will come out every 2 weeks, and then when those are done, we will have three more shows, I believe. One is going, maybe just two. Going to do one on. I'm going to give my prediction of the top 25. When we have Old Man Nate's top 25, and then I'm going to give my prediction who will make the college football playoff, as well on that same episode as who will win the 2023 national championship. So you don't want to miss out on this series. If you followed my NBA series, I was spot on. I picked the winners for at each level and got the champion. You know, even picked Denver to win in 5 games. That's how good I was. That's how close I had it down. So I even had Miami beating Milwaukee in the first round and beating Boston to make it to the NBA Finals. I had them winning in Game 7. So Old Man Nate was spot on in the NBA Finals. We'll see if he's spot on in the college football preview. Okay. So first of all, there's some schools that were non-Power 5 schools, and to be honest with you, some of them were, at least had a one or two good seasons since the BCS era to, I won't say put a scare on Power 5 schools, but at least get their name in consideration, get their name in the talk. Okay. Those schools, though, some of those schools, three of those schools, matter of fact, are now part of the Big 12. So we will talk about them in the Big 12. But those schools are Cincinnati, who did actually make the college football playoff a couple years ago, UCF, who went undefeated, and they were not crowned a national champion, but they decided within themselves they were national champions. So they have themselves claimed a national championship without actually being granted the national championship from the normal sources we claim national championships from, which is the AP poll and the college. The coaches poll, which is really the playoff, college football playoff. All right, or now it is. And then also Houston has not played in the playoff, and they have not claimed the national championship, but they did have a couple of good seasons where it came down all the way. Like they were really they they were close to being like Cincinnati was, where we got to throw their name out there and see if they're worthy of being in the playoff or the BCS title game or something like that. And but they lost. I believe they lost to Memphis, and so that eliminated them right there. Also joining, they were independent though, but also joining a Power 5 conference was BYU. Now BYU, they've had some decent years. In fact, in 2020, now I know that's COVID year, but in 2020, they, because they were an independent and they didn't have a conference, and in 2020 everybody just played conference games. They had to fight and scrap put together a schedule because a lot of their games were canceled, including this on the fly, calling up Coastal Carolina saying, "Hey, you're undefeated. We're undefeated. We'll come there. Let's make a game happen." And they put it together. It ended up being a great game, and Coastal Carolina ended up winning the ball game. So that ruined BYU's chance of being in consideration for the playoff. They do have a national title though in '84, as Steve Young, I believe it was Steve Young was a quarterback. Maybe wrong on that one. That seems like long far away, but they won a national championship. And back then is a little different now. You know, the the conferences, they had the bowl games you went to, and it didn't matter. It did not matter if you was undefeated or if you had 4 or 5 losses. If you won your conference, and I believe BYU was in a conference at that time, they they went to a certain bowl game, and so BYU was undefeated, but ended up playing, instead of playing like a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 seed ranked team, they played a, like, I don't remember the record, but they were like basically 500 Michigan team, and they won. They beat Michigan, but it was a close game. But they ended up being the only undefeated team that season. So BYU was granted a national championship, an outright national championship. So they do have one. So, but those are teams that we're going to talk about more later on when we get to the Big 12. There's some other teams that have either been, you know, have their names run out there for since the BCS era, as not necessarily making it, having a chance to make the playoff or a BCS title game, but have had really good years and have done their own spoiling, we should say, as in Boise State has done that. Um, they really come to the top of mind on that. But there's some other teams right now that, usually have been consistent in the last 10 years of winning at least 8, 9, 10, 11 games in a season. So we're going to talk about them. And like I said, we're going to talk about a couple of independent schools that aren't part of a conference. And I'm going to let you know if I think that if any of these schools have a shot of making the college football playoff. But before I do that, if you have not already, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you get notified when Old Man Nate comes on or drops a recording. Comes on live or drops a recording. You can also go to oldmancoffee.shop right there, oldmancoffee.shop, and pick you up some coffee. We have 47 different types of flavors, and we also have these in K-cups. If you got some coffee, you need something to drink it in, get you some tumblers. We got 3 or 4 different colors you can order from, and support Old Man Nate by drinking some coffee, ordering a tumbler, or you can also get you an Old Man Sports Talk t-shirt. All right. So go to oldmancoffee.shop and order you some t-shirts, tumblers, or coffee. Also, you see my email scrolling across the bottom here. If any of you ever have any questions, reach out to Old Man Nate at nathan.darnell14 at oldmansportstalk.com. Okay? And if you have something you'd like for Old Man Nate to talk about, just drop that in the email, and we'll definitely be willing to talk about it. All right, so back to the non-Power 5 schools. The first school we're going to talk about is UTSA. So they're returning 8 offensive and 8 defensive players, including their starting quarterback, running back, and 3 wide receivers and tight end on the offensive side of the ball. So they should be really loaded on the offense. But I looked at their schedule, and I'm not going to pull up everybody's schedule. This video could take a long time. I'm not trying to make them, hours long. So break it down a little bit. Um, I've got UTSA going 10-2 with their two losses though to Army and Tennessee. That's a good season right there. You lose to Tennessee and Army. We're going to talk about on here in a little bit also. So um, yeah, I think that's a really good season. They'll win their conference and go to a good bowl game. The next team we got coming up is SMU. Wait a minute, SMU's yeah, they're in a conference. There's not a Power Five conference. Okay, my bad. I had a brain fart. But they're also returning 8 offensive and 8 defensive players. They don't have their quarterback in Tanner Mordecai anymore, as he actually went on to a Power Five conference in Wisconsin. But they do have 3 wide receivers and they're tied in. I still think they're going to be really good. If their quarterback is able to perform, I'm not sure I have much on him. I don't know if I have really any information on him. So I'm going to go with SMU actually going 11-1, and their only loss coming to Oklahoma. It's in Norman, so I don't think they'll win that game. But I think they'll have a great season. And there may be some talk about them just simply because their only loss being to Oklahoma and Norman about making a college football playoff. We'll see. Okay. The next school we're going to talk about is Tulane. Tulane's returning 6 offensive and 8 defensive players, including their quarterback and running back. Now, listen, everybody is high on Tulane because of what they did with USC. I will say this, though. They actually got a little lucky. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was so happy to see that. I was super excited, but they got super lucky. I mean, remember now, they scored a touchdown. They were down like 15 or something. They scored a touchdown, kickoff with like 6 minutes to go in the game. The ball is going, the player comes in to catch it at the 1 yard line. He was in the end zone. He comes in to catch it in the field of play at the 1 yard line, and it bounces off his arms and out of bounds at the 1 yard line. What better? I mean, you can't get no luckier than that right there. It would have either been, I mean, if he'd have let it go, it would have either went out of bounds or it would have been, it bounced in the end zone. And USC would have gotten the ball at the very least the 25-yard line and would have been better off. But instead, they got it at the 1 yard line. Tulane ends up getting a safety. So now it's like a 6-point game. After that touchdown, it was a matter of 15, scored a touchdown. So they're down 8, get a safety. Now they're down 6. And since the safety, get the ball back, and they drive all the way down the field and score a touchdown and get the extra point with like 30 seconds to go in a game. And USC couldn't get the ball down the field. So it was, I mean, don't get me wrong, Tulane played really well. They played over their heads that game, and they played really well at the last. But it took a lucky play like that, the kickoff that bounced off the player's arms out of bounds, for them to get that win. And that does not mean that they're going to be really good this year. Okay, a lot of people are picking them to be really good. Their quarterback is pretty good. He can run the ball. He can throw the ball. He's good. And for their conference, they'll probably be really good. But I'm not picking them to be in consideration for the college football playoff. I've actually got them going 9-3. And by the way, they have their quarterback, running back, and 2 wide receivers returning. So their offense should be pretty good. Their 3 losses I got going to Ole Miss, Memphis, and UTSA. So I don't even got them winning their conference this year, but I do still have a really good season at 9-3. Memphis is the next team we're going to talk about. They're returning offensive players, six defensive players. They're also returning their quarterback and two wide receivers. I got them going 9-3 also, as well as Tulane. And their losses coming to Missouri, Boise State, and SMU. So three non-conference losses. So they will play. I got them playing in their conference championship game against. I believe they're in the same conference as UTSA. Okay, so so I didn't really pay attention a lot to those non-power five conferences because there was some realignment in those as well. I mentioned the Big 12 picking up some schools, and that was from that conference. Um, a lot of those schools came from, so they had to reload, and they did pick up some schools. So the next school we're going to talk about is Boise State. Boise State is returning six offensive and eight defensive players. They're returning their running back and two wide receivers, not their quarterback. I've also got them going 9-3, with their losses coming to Duke, USC, and Clemson. Man, that's a tough non-conference schedule right there. We'll talk about Duke pretty soon. We'll talk about all these conferences and all these schools in upcoming videos. But um, yeah, those are three really tough games for them, and I got them. My bad. I looked at the wrong. I looked at the wrong ones. Okay, I'm sorry. Boise State I got going 10-2, and their losses are to Washington and San Diego State. And by the way, they do have their quarterback returning, their running back, two wide receivers, and their tight end. So they will be loaded on offense. We got going 10-2 with losses to Washington and San Diego State. Speaking of San Diego State, that's the next thing I'm going to talk about. They're returning. Man, let me just redo Boise State all the way over because I messed that up. So Boise State's returning nine offensive, five defensive, their quarterback, running back, two wide receivers, and their tight end. I got them going 10-2 with losses to Washington and San Diego State. Then San Diego State, they're returning six offensive, six defensive players, their quarterback, running back, and their wide receiver. And I got them going, going 9-3 with losses to UCLA, Oregon State, and Fresno State. Now, when I say returning, they're returning more players than these guys. I want to clarify that real quick. In these videos, when I say how many of the players are returning, I'm really just talking about key contributors, whether they started last year or not. But they had pretty decent numbers from the year before. I'm not counting everybody, every player. If a player only had 10 catches, I'm not counting them. All right, they had to be close to at least 20 catches on the year, 20 carries. I mean, that's at least 20 carries on the year for me to say they're a returning player. Okay, now I know running back can be deceiving sometimes because when it gets in the late in the game and they're up, a lot of times they'll have the reserves in there, but really the only person that gets any action is the running back. So he may get 10 or 15 carries in one game, right? And then he end up with 5 carries the rest of the season. So I understand running back is easier to pass that threshold, but that's just what I went off of right now. So those are my non-power five teams that I looked at. Could there be some other teams that make us scared? Maybe, but those teams aren't historically, or at least in the last 10 years, 10 to 20 years, known to have had decent seasons. So I didn't include those teams. Now the independent schools. Let's talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame is returning six offensive and eight defensive players. They're returning a running back and two wide receivers. I got them going 9-3. They've got a really tough schedule. I really should pull out their schedule, but the three losses I got them are to Duke, USC, and Clemson. Now, Another team they play, I've got them winning, is Ohio State. So yeah, that they've got they've got four really good games right there that I just named. Ohio State, Duke, USC, and Clemson that I'll be looking forward to watching this year. And but I got Notre Dame actually losing three of the four. Okay, and I believe all three of those were on the road. That's why I picked them to lose. Okay, so the other independent school we're going to talk about is Army. I told you I had UTSA losing to Army. I think Army is going to be really good this year, and the type of offense they run makes it very difficult, even on your Power Five traditionally good schools. They give them run for the money. I remember in 2019 they came to Norman and they gave OU everything I mean they could handle, man. And went to overtime. OU did end up winning, but it was scary. And then the following year they went to Michigan and gave Michigan everything that they could handle. Now they've been down a couple years, but they're back up there this year. They did lose their quarterback, but the style of play they run where they don't throw the ball a lot. You don't need a quarterback that learning different passing schemes and stuff. It's just running that triple option and passing, maybe 5 or 6 times a game. So they do have 9 offensive players returning and 8 defensive, including 3 running backs, a wide receiver, and a tight end. So I think they're going to be very, very talented running the ball on offense. I've got them going 10-2, and their 2 losses are going to be to Syracuse and LSU. Now they could beat Syracuse. I'm only picking Syracuse to win in this one because they are playing at Syracuse, and Syracuse is kind of. I mean, I think Syracuse is going to be decent this year. So, um, yeah, I think, and they're going to give LSU everything they want, everything LSU wants. That's going to be. I hope that ends up being a night game down there. That'd be great for Army for them to experience that a type of atmosphere. But yeah, I think it will be. They'll have a great season and go 10-2. So, do I think any non-Power Five school or independent school will have a chance to make the college football playoff this year? Well, by what I just said, the only team that would have a chance, by all the predictions I gave for those schools, the only team that would have a chance would be SMU. And it's a fairly early loss to Oklahoma. I believe it's the second game of the season. So they could bounce back, but they would have to have very impressive wins. And I'm not just talking about like scoring 60 points a game or 50 points a game. They would have to, their defense would have to be really good too. And they would have to be able to win like 50-14 or 50-21 on a lot of the games in their conference to have a chance. Notre Dame, if I'm wrong about their losses, they will have a shot simply because they've got a tough schedule. And so if they're able to beat Duke, USC, and Clemson, and like I said, in Ohio State, and maybe even just stumble against one of those teams, as long as it's not late in the season, they usually play USC late in the season. So as long as it's not that one, then I would think they could have a chance. Losing twice, and I would say no. So, anyways, outside of that, I really don't see any team having a chance for the Power Five, non-Power Five, and independent schools this year. So, if you haven't already, please take the time to go like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And so that way you get notified every time Old Man Nate is dropping a video or goes live. And also, you can go to oldmancoffee.shop and pick you up some coffee. And when you got the coffee, you can drink it in a tumbler. We have two different sizes, 20 ounce and 30 ounce, or you can get you a t-shirt. All right. If the code is still in this video, then in the description below, then that means we're having a promo right now. So check it out, see if it's in there. We'll get you a promo and get you a discount on the tumbler or t-shirt. All right. So anyways, I appreciate everybody watching the video. I appreciate all your support. Please continue to support and continue to watch the next videos. They'll be coming out really soon. ACC Conference ACC be the next video. All right. So see you soon. Thank you again, and bye-bye.